And Anivia banned by the Flash Wolves.
I feel like it makes a lot of sense. Kira, in team fights, he looks exceptional on the champion. Going for the slightly more different build in terms of maxing the W first rather than the Q to have the utilization of the walls and the zone control definitely shows a lot of respect and expertise towards Kira.
And so much of the current style of League of Legends reintroduce champions that no longer rely on gap close. We're looking at Olaf, we're looking at Sion, Skarner, Trundle, all of these champions, and it really does fit the Anivia wheelhouse. So the fact that Kira is a legacy player of this champion and it has a fantastic spot in the current meta, I think it's one of those ones that if you don't want to play against it, it's kind of the free ban.
I also feel like looking at some of the bans from Gambit right now, we've seen the early ban onto the Skarner. Now, when you look at the champions that Mugen is typically preferred, it is things like the Sejuani and the Jarvan. And in his finals, he played a lot of Skarner, but then defaulted to the Kha'Zix. So Gambit might be trying to put Mugen onto the Kha'Zix, or maybe they want to look to take it away from him and see what else he has available in his playbook.
And again, the metagame has just shifted so much since people have had tape on the Flash Wolves, so it can certainly be tough to navigate as GP and Ezreal will also get taken away by the Flash Wolves. Alistar there for Gambit, and last but not least, it is Sejuani, so still taking a note from the last games they saw.
Yeah, it's absolutely important to acknowledge the fact that Mugen's champion pool has been the area they hit, and I think the reason behind that is not only is he a rookie, but he is responsible, especially throughout that final series, of going towards Maple's lane. So we have to continue to track whether this does put him onto a non-gank heavy jungler.
So kind of all these things fell out. We're talking about some bans, and turns out Rakan and Kai'Sa have been traded, which were pretty much mainstay red side bans for most of the play-in.
And initially I was thinking, oh, Caitlyn, Morgana, they make a lot of sense, but with the priority for Gambit to ban away the junglers, a lot of these strong power picks that we've typically been seeing throughout the play-in stages have been left available. So I would look to think that Gambit would either go for a Thresh or a Morgana on the next rotation to make sure they have a decent matchup into the Rosaya Rakan the Flash Wolves have drafted.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a little bit strange to go to Morgana in my opinion. It will be great late game, but throughout the laning phase, you're still going to have the potential all in. So I think that you have to go fire with fire. I would love to see a Thresh come out of Edward here, and for him to step up to the plate, look to be actively playmaking, because we know that is the style that Sword Art wants to be playing, especially on something like Rakan.
And things have just kind of been closed out. Kha'Zix is the selection from Mugen, with a few junglers banned away and Trundle taken. And it does feel like Edward is trending towards a more aggressive lane support. We've seen a decent amount of Braum, but Thresh will be great as well.
And with how squishy this comp is, I would be really interested to see if Maple defaults back to something like Galio, something that has been tapped down time and time again, but he has shown within the LMS, because I'm looking down the lineup and they are going to be able to start these fights. They will have backline access, but without the CC, it's going to be difficult.
And I feel like something that we saw from Gambit during the play-ins was that when Lodic was on something that wasn't an Ezreal, this team loved to play through bot. So already they're reading the expectation that Galio will be taken off the board. And I feel like Ornn is going to be a big priority now for Gambit, because Flash Wolves, Hanabi, a very young player on the team, a brand new rookie to the legacy of Flash Wolves. One of the big things that he played during the regular season was Ornn and Gangplank. By already banning away the Gangplank and needing a follow-up engage to the Rakan, I feel like Ornn becomes the next value thing.
But then they banned it. So clearly respecting the power on the other side for Stayhouse as well. There's Rise banned away from Maple on the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. And now I just have a look at what's left available for Flash Wolves, and it seems that they need tanks in areas that you can't necessarily get them. Potentially they're going to be defaulting to something like a Sion, which isn't great, into the Trundle. Potentially Maokai, the other tank that we've seen. This is going to be difficult for the Flash Wolves to navigate.
I feel like right now Gambit are just looking for an engage. Sion in my head would make the most sense on their draft right now, but they may choose to wait and go for a Maokai a little bit later on, which is one of the big comfort picks for Stasios, and then they can just look to get themselves the mid laner later on.
And look at you two, there's the Maokai for Gambit Esports, as Flash Wolves have a lot of tough choices really to make here in their last two picks of the draft. Cho'Gath, another one that we've seen here and then. We'll see if that's the pick they want here for Hanabi.
So I feel like Cho'Gath is, in terms of the matchup, a fine pick. But again, outside of the Rakan, you don't really have that much engage or that much of a front line. So I wonder if Flash Wolves will just go for some staple damage in something like an Azir or a Cassio. So that way they can have good Baron setups in the later game.
Yeah, I also wouldn't mind to see even potentially something like the Rise and just heavily put Maple... Oh, banned, actually. Yeah, wow, God.
They would have liked it too, I think.
Yeah, so Cassiopeia is probably your best bet.
Ooh.
Karma doesn't tick that box for me at all, because I was like, you have to pull this comp apart somehow, and that is not how you pull a comp apart.
That is Karma, though, the last pick for Flash Roll, so we'll see what Kira has as his final pick. I mean, it's kind of like a pick to Vladimir, perhaps, but I agree. I don't really like it either. So we'll see what Gambit have. They are giving Kira a counter pick on what should be quite the hot matchup here in mid.
I think the Cassio makes the most sense here. I really like it into the Karma as well. You can gain a lot of priority in terms of the 1 versus 1. I feel like it gives you a lot of team fight power as well, and it synergizes very nicely with the comp that they've already drafted.
Absolutely, and so much of the Flash Wolves legacy was built around Casa, Maple, 2v2 taking over the map, Sword Art looking for engages. Cassiopeia wins majority of 2v2s if you can bring any form of CC with your jungler, and right now when you have a look at Cassio going into Karma Kha'Zix, like that is literally a suicide gang on the way.
I'm just, right now I feel like Gambit, their team composition definitely gears more towards the scaling aspect. One of the big things we were talking about in our prep spawn was that Gambit seem to succeed the most when they just have straightforward 5v5 team comps, because this team loves to play around Baron, especially when you get to the 20-25 minute mark. That becomes the big focus of this team, and when we saw them play things like the Fiora, they kept trying to team fight with it and they couldn't properly execute upon that kind of a draft.
Yeah, absolutely, and I talk about it all the time. It's all good to come up with these creative drafts, but at the end of the day, ease of execution earns you bonus points. And when you have a look at things like Trundle and Maokai, the ease of execution is there. You can attack frontline. The Trundle ultimate is going to strip it through. You've got 2 very big hyper carries that will be able to get backline access as the fights start to break down and deteriorate. So I absolutely love what Gambit has put together. In a big game for some of your new players, this is going to be a comp that they would be very experienced with.
Now for Flash Wolves though, they do have a lot of early winning lanes. Zyra Khan, always going to be strong. And when you have a Kha'Zix to back it up, looking to play through bot, I feel is the big win condition that Flash Wolves need to find. Because when you have the Karma, you have good early push, Cho'Gath into the Maokai as well, you should have pressure on that lane. So you have 3 lanes in which you can gain that priority, and Mujin just needs to be active. He is the individual that we're looking at to facilitate the early leads for Flash Wolves.
In some ways, it does feel like the gauntlet has been thrown down by Flash Wolves, saying, all right, we'll give you Kai'Sa, let's see what you got. But Gambit have talked about their preparation all tournament long. They have not stopped practicing since they qualified for this, so should be quite the best of 5 to kick things off onto Summoner's Rift for game number 1.
And we see, once again, just a default start. And I think this kind of gameplay is what we're going to see out of Flash Wolves. You already talked about it, but pushing lanes into vision, into priority, for Mujin to be able to get into the enemy jungle. And I think that when you have a look at it, all of the lanes at this stage will be there at least for the early stages. So Diamond needs to show his savviness, needs to show that veteran status. We were complementing his counter ganks on the likes of the Zac, the Trundle, and the Olaf during the play-in stage. I think this is a game where he needs to be able to dodge the Kha'Zix, because if he ever gets a Karma there in his back pocket, Diamond can be shut down early.
And I'm looking at some of the early vision that has been set up. It feels like the Gambit, they're not too focused on trying to figure out where Mujin is starting. Expectations are that they will look to play through bot side. However, you would imagine that full early clears will be the main priority for both these junglers. And then once they hit that level 4 mark, that's where we should start to see a little bit more jungle interaction and where they want to try and find those early leads.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see both of the lanes actually joining relatively late. Leashless jungle starts coming through. One of the strengths of both these junglers is they don't necessarily need all that much health.
Oh, this could be trouble though. Actually, is Betty maybe going to get turned back around? The stun lands in, and we're going to try and make the play. They flashed it, a double flash forward, and the rookie's going to grab first blood.
Right at the very beginning of the game, Gambit, they might get another.
Going in for Sword Art as well, but no plasma proc this time.
And I said if there's a player to watch on the Gambit lineup, it's going to be Lodic. They gave him the best champion in his role. Eddie goes in nice and aggressive. And I mean, that is a nightmare start for the Flash Wolves.
That is the worst possible start. Our whole narrative coming into the draft is you have to get a lead in the 2 versus 2. Lodic sidesteps, Sword Art engage, and then Gambit's bot lane just go, oh, well, Betty's by himself now. He doesn't have any kind of peel. We're going all in, and the punish was beautiful.
And this is something that we saw a lot. You know, the double W start out of Zion Rakan. How do you navigate it? Do you flash aggressively? Do you have to burn summoner spells? That was just a sidestep. That was just clutch. That is ice water running through his veins at that stage.
And before the lane had barely started, that is was a big old bagel in Betty's CS column for a while. Now finally starting to pick some up as the lane crashes in. But that is about the best start this young AD carry could ask for.
And to think about it, Lodic, this guy, he came onto the team like during the end of the regular season for Gambit. He is a complete rookie. He's still in school. This guy, expectations were so low, especially when Gambit found so much success with blasting in their own league as well, to come out on the international stage and have such a good play-in, so then against the Flash Wolves, start off the game with a first blood. You couldn't be feeling any more confident than that.
Well, you can see junglers now weaving around after that. Some mishap in the bot lane. Hanabi there onto Stayhouse again. Shoget very good in a lot of these times of matchups, but Diamond back down the bot side for more food. Knockup's gonna land into Lodic, but Eggman wants it. Sword Art, no flash, but does zip away with the E.
And this is a thing about Rakan that will suit Sword Art so well. He wants to play aggressively, will go in, but the ability for Rakan to also be able to scoot out of danger means that now they get vision on where Trundle is, and we said so much of this early game, at least from the Kha'Zix perspective, is going to be getting those tells on what side of the map Trundle has been able to get towards and being able to shut it down.
Let's see how it kind of develops. The Sword Art maybe actually caught here again. Long dash range, so no over-aggression there from Gambit.
Now, one of the big things here, or that play was important for the Flash Wolves because Lodic has a lot of gold that he wants to spend right now that he's not being allowed to because of the interaction that Sword Art is playing. Look, 1,200 gold is what he's currently sitting on, and the longer the Flash Wolves can delay it, the more opportunities they have to just try and mitigate that lead as much as possible, so that ideally when Flash Wolves come back to lane after the first base, it's not as bad as it potentially could be.
Again, though, Sword Art going back in a great double knockup. Lodic getting ignited. This might be the counterplay that the Flash Wolves need. Betty wants it, but he doesn't have a flash, and Lodic's going to live through the ignite as well.
Absolutely, but they will crash the wave afterwards, so even though they don't get the ultimate reward, still being able to bully it out, and it's exactly from what you talked to. Actually, Mugen wants it.
Edward says no, he read the play, but now he's getting a little too low. Sword Art going to dive back in under the turret for it, and Mugen collects a kill.
Good guy support Edward. Sacrifices his life to guarantee the survival of his AD carry. That allows Lodic to go back to base, spend some of his gold, but it will mean the Flash Wolves get a bit of pressure back down in the bottom lane.
Yeah, absolutely, and Mugen just picking his mark. This is a guy that doesn't necessarily... Actually, Maple wants something in the mid lane.
Yeah, Adamanta there for Kira. Tough stuff for the Cassio, but holds onto the summoner spells.
Yeah, so let's go back to that thought. Mugen, not the highest jungle proximity jungler coming into MSI, was known a little bit more for his farm-heavy gameplay. However, in the finals, did start to show that he was going more towards that mid lane, more towards the bottom lane. And Casa, as a player, the shoes that this guy has to fill was a hugely aggressive jungle. Wanted to get in the lanes early, and there was this massive debate. Was it Casa's team? Was it Maple's team? And now Mugen has to be able to come in and show that he can also have impact.
And fortunately for Mugen, he was able to pick up a bit of action down towards the bottom half after what was a great engage from the Flash Wolves. And again, this all came down to the fact that they stopped that early base. Gambit couldn't spend that gold, which means that the 2v2 was still relatively even in terms of experience. They were able to make that play, and they were able to find themselves a kill.
Well, Mugen looking good so far on that Kha'Zix. As you mentioned, Vedia is certainly a pick he is known for, continuing to stalk through the jungle, get down some vision, although Gambit now have placed some control wards to try and defend from a lot of where Kha'Zix is going again. After that bot side play, it feels like Mugen really spread across the map and he's got information, and the bot lane still balanced pretty precariously, but Sword Art again, gonna get stunned the ignite. Oh, he's back up for Ogle, but he didn't use it. The root though still lands in. Lodic, I think, made a bit of a misstep, and now gonna try and fight it out. He burns a heal, he wants the kill, but he's not gonna be able to get it. The heal in response, and Betty gets the next kill.
Absolutely, you can see that Gambit did not want to fight that because the duo lane of Mugen and Maple from the mid were rotating down the river very quickly, and there was just no way they would be able to get out or trade. In the end, Lodic, even burning summoner spells, did get one back in response, but that is a very aggressive play.
Initially, you can see here that the engagement comes down onto Lodic, right? So they get a good chunk of damage down onto Sword Out. Then with the root, they feel that confident enough to go for the re-engage. Edward recognizes, okay, there are two people coming bot, Lodic's gonna die. But then he sees, oh, maybe I can get a kill onto Sword Art. But then he gets the heal from his Q on top of the heal from the enemy AD carry. And it ends up just being a trade of summoner spells, but Flash Wolves get another kill on the bottom.
And I mean, Sword Art said in the opening tease that he hopes this is an aggressive game. That's the style of League of Legends he likes to play. Well, I think it's more than fair to say, in the bottom lane at least so far, these guys have been trading back and forward. And it is actually the veterans of Betty and Sword Art that are now starting to take a little bit of that lead.
Well, looks like, again, Mugen been putting a lot of work in early. Diamond, though, is going to spot him. Burns the ulti. Diamond really wants to get something done here, but a good leap from Mugen. Gets himself out safely.
You can see there was just no way they can fight that. Mid lane being pushed in, top lane being pushed in. The rotation from the solo laners was always going to be there quicker from Kira.
You know, when we talked a little bit about Mujin, you bring him up earlier, Spawn, in terms of the difference that we saw from his regular season performance from his finals. Typically, he wasn't known for being that hyper-aggressive early-game jungler, but that kind of shifted in the finals, and a lot of his time was spent hanging around the mid lane, and then he would group up with his mid laner, and then bring that action down to the bottom lane, and it's a lot of what we're seeing so far in this game. Even after the early deficit the Flash Wolves found themselves in, with their confident playing, with the willingness to try and be proactive, they found advantages back. They now sit at a CS lead, and everything seems to be back in their favor.
And when you have a look at the makeup of this roster, when you have Maple in the mid lane, Sword Art as a support, the jungle proximity just makes so much sense. Hanabi, who we haven't really talked about, he just really needs to stay top lane, scale up, and be a team fight presence. The mid lane and support duo of the Flash Wolves are so much of their playmaking support expertise.
Well, Mujin's League IQ really kicking in once again, moves in and just scoops up the blue buff that Kira so thoughtfully leashed for him. Again, lots of presence of mind, really strong, intelligent play from Mujin has made a lot of these plays convert early, and Flash Wolves are going to try and use that advantage to take the first drake.
You know, and it's just thanks to this vision that they had set up around the blue buff on Gambit's side of the map, because they're aware that Diamond Prox, he currently is on the bot side of his jungle. Kira has just burned all of his mana trying to get the blue buff. This enables Flash Wolves to get a completely free Drake.
Absolutely, the power points were also there. Maple able to get some additional ranks. You know, you've got level 6 reached on your Xayah, and your Rakan makes the team fight so much nicer at that stage of the game. And Diamond Prox had already used his ulti, so that wasn't going to be available. So the window capitalized on, and a Mountain Drake picked up. This is something that the Flash Wolves during the regular season didn't have the highest priority on Dragons.
But if it's free, well,
I mean, why not?
The setup's just been so good so far, and again, the gold has tipped back in favor of the Flash Wolves. Not by much, to be fair, but equalizing that first blood gold about 300-400 up. As we see the lane's going to dissipate. Again, Gambit, they are known to kind of fall behind sometimes, but they're expecting, if the lead holds not too bad for them, we're expecting a spike kind of back towards the 20-25 minute mark.
Absolutely, and now Ved, we've talked about this a lot. We see that the large gold percentage is going to be on Maple, but he's playing something like a Karma. I know not necessarily your favorite pick coming into the tournament. What is it that you dislike about the champion? People say it gives you kind of that free priority because of the empowered Q. Like, what isn't it that you don't like about it?
I mean, I feel like the champion offers a lot of value in terms of priority, because typically you see a lot of early banner. So you just banner up the cannon menu, you instantly have a difficult lane if you're the Cassio, and you also can set up someone like a Xayah to do a lot of damage in the late game. But I feel like it just puts more of an emphasis on your other playmakers, and that means that if anything goes wrong, like, I don't know, dying at level 1, it could be pretty bad.
So sneaky though from Mujin. Again, Diamond, right place, right time, but I don't think he's got enough time. A good double stun is not going to be enough as Mujin leaps back over to get the kill.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see that Kira was so aware of where Sword Art was because he was clearing out vision on the bottom side of the map that it allowed Mujin to sneak in from the top side and get on top of Kira before anything was really there. No immediate flash means he falls down.
You know, and while I might not be a fan of the Karma, one of the great things that she is very good at is setting up for high damage junglers. So Mujin, he was just lying in wait, and Maple, he does what he's been doing all of this lane phase so far. Walk up with the W, land it against the Cassio, even flashes in to secure the route in case he tries to flash away. He has the shield for the speed up, and then all you need from Mujin is the damage.
Yeah, and my apologies, Kira actually didn't have flash, so that gank was pretty much free as soon as Maple was in range, wasn't able to create that distance that you require on the tether. And this is something that it's a very different look for Maple. We're used to seeing him play Cassiopeia, Azir, Ryze.
LeBlanc,
Historically, LeBlanc, Zed, Echo, all of the big damage impacts, but now putting some faith into Betty, an AD carry that necessarily hasn't shown up on international stages, and looking to give him all the power to carry in this game.
And transferring some of that to Mujin as well, who's bearing some of the early game responsibility on the Kazakhs. Looking so good so far. Warrior and Moby Boots done, and just this clinicalness of this man's play, how precise he has been in this first 12 minutes has really impressed me.
Now the thing here is for Flash Wolves, we talked a lot about the differences in the draft, and we talked about how we kind of preferred Gambit's draft overall because of the things that it offered you in the later stages of the game, and it kind of put Flash Wolves in this situation where they needed to get advantages early. And after dropping first blood in the bot lane, you'd think, this isn't really how you want to start your game, but fortunately they've been able to turn it around, and now they've found a bit of an early gold lead. They still need to keep that momentum going, and they need to really secure that bot tier 1. And I imagine that if we look down at the health bar of that tower, it is starting to get low. And you can see it's about 60% of its health left, and you would imagine that Flash Wolves, they may even look to use their teleport to make a play down here, but this tower is going to be their main focus over the next couple of minutes.
Yeah, absolutely, especially given the fact Banner of Command picked up for both of them as Sorta, potentially a little bit too aggressive. No, we'll be able to get out. Cho'Gath can just eat that, drop his own banner, and there really is no way for them to deal with it. So Stehos, he knows that. He does the right thing. He goes mid lane with it.
Yep, time to banner somewhere else, but Mugen also here. Control Ward is going to spot him. But not really any damage they can do with a Cassio and 2 melee champions. So Mugen will swoop in, he'll get the gold from the cannon and say, sorry Maple, but you weren't getting it anyway.
Hanabi dropped his top lane as well, so now that window that you're speaking about, Vedius, is completely on the table. It's going to take Stehos so much time. He used some of his top lane priority to get that first move go mid lane. But I think you're right. I think that, you know, with all of the vision being set up bottom, this is potentially where it's going to be. And actually, even though he used it, I can't find his banner minion, so it's like...
I would imagine that it was killed by the dematerializer by Stasios before he headed down to the mid lane. He thought, hey, you've already used your banner, maybe I can use this as an opportunity to go mid and shut that down, but unfortunately they couldn't really find much off the back of it, didn't lose very much either. So Gambit, for the time being, the deficit that they're at, kind of expected when you look at the comps, but they do always have that scaling option available with the Cassio and the Kaisar. They want to avoid all-ins for the time being, especially when you look at the difference in items of a PF sword versus the recurve bow. Definitely would go in favor of Betty and Sword Out at this point in time.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say absolutely, and so much of the pressure therefore becomes on Edward, because if you're standing on top of your 80 carry, if you ever get charged, knocked up, you can't get the shield up in time. This is such a hard lane to respond to.
That is why he went down to the mid lane. Makes a lot more sense.
I like it.
Yeah.
Well, you can see 35 seconds on the next Mountain Drake, so Flash was continuing pretty measured, but just very confident pace of play. Again, we haven't seen this team in quite a while. Have always dominated domestically, but so far in this game, just playing in a very slow, calculated League of Legends, just kind of showing off a lot of their experience more than anything else.
And let's talk about why that domestic dominance doesn't seem to mean as much. Actually, we're going to have some action mid lane, so we'll talk about that later.
Mugen getting frisky once again, but everyone backing away. I would too from the 2-0 Kazakhs.
Yeah, so when you have a look at a team like AHQ, potentially... No, let's not. Where's he going? When you have a look at a team like AHQ, no longer have their legendary mid laners, you know, the roster has been separated. It's still got Ziv as well as their bottom lane in Arn and Elvis, but they've dropped off. I think they finished 5th or 6th this time around. When you have a look at someone like J-Team, who had such a good couple of splits in a row, now they've fallen off. They finished 4th. This Flash Wolves lineup is the only of the top lineups that have been able to maintain any semblance of core. And even in that regard, they lost out on Stake, they lost out on Casa. That's why when we give them credit for being the best team in the region, it does seem like the region has begun to go backwards in terms of talent, with the LPL starting to, you know, look towards the LMS as a legitimate area to be able to pick up superstar players.
I mean, it's very true. And Casa, he's already secured a spot towards MSI, making it alongside RNG, and it's going to be very exciting to potentially see him play up against Flash Wolves if they can make it that far, because, as you rightly said, the relative skill of the Flash Wolves is always something that's under debate, because sometimes they come into international tournaments and they're known as the Korean Killers and they get all these upsets and they have these fantastic performances, whereas other times they end up losing to teams of an equivalent skill level to Gambit, and you never really know what kind of a performance that you're going to get.
Absolutely, you don't even, like, that's the team, you don't even know what level of performance you're going to get out of the players. MMD burst onto the scene, everyone said he's high elo career, this is the guy that's going to be able to take on Ziv in the top lane in the LMS region. Honestly, was very underwhelming, at least in international performances. Then you've got people like NL, who domestically was so relevant for such a long time. Ultimately, they traded him out in favor of Betty. This is a team that has had to play with their roster over and over again to try and look for those 5 successful pieces to make it work.
Well, I'll let you know in a few more games, because still quite a lot to go in just this first one. Mountain Drake 2 did get secured, though, by the Flash Wolves, who, again, are just kind of scaling up slowly in this game. Perhaps the worry, though, is that should favor Gambit. Again, this is a team that has had a small gold lead, but still been able to come back, and you can see items are starting to get bought up as well.
Yeah, my main concern for Flash Wolves right now is that bot tower is still alive. They haven't been able to move Betty and Sword Art around and utilize the strength of this duo. The fact that Lodic and Edward have been able to hold off the siege for this long, and that Flash Wolves haven't really tried to set up any kind of TP plays, but I say that, they're going to secure themselves the top tower instead.
Yeah, that first banner minion did a lot of work, and now Stehos actually going to be in a bit of trouble, going to get ruptured up. Now going to get potentially taken down. Diamond here to answer, but the ult out from Stayhouse. Going to try and lock up the Cho'Gath. Probably not the target they're after.
Yeah, unfortunately, Stayhouse was just Otherwise, they would have been able to hold him there and wail down on him with repetitive CC. However, first turret, once again, from a jungler just showing into a lane and pushing it down.
I'm surprised because I was expecting this to happen bot side. I was expecting the Kha'Zix and the Cho to try and be proactive towards that side of the map, but Cho'Gath into Maokai, you do have that ability to push. We talked a little bit about it coming into the game, and it turns out that they've now been able to secure top tower along with this Rift Herald. And when you compare, like, Gambit have not tried to contest any of these neutral objectives. They've now given up 2 Drakes, they've given up a Rift Herald, and they haven't even tried to fight. Sure, they have scaling, but you can't afford to give all these things away for free, because then the deficit that you find yourself in, you'll struggle to come back from.
Yeah, and this seems to be too much of a good thing. Gambit came in, they said, we're going to pick a scaling team fight comp because we know that Flashwoods do like to play the game a little bit slow throughout the early game, and then they accelerate as they start picking up items. So they said, we can get a comp to do that as well. Flash Wolves, however, have kind of ignored the rules of engagement. And now with a Cho'Gath, as well as 2 Mountain Dragons, Baron is going to become incredibly well. And we said they might struggle to generate team fights. Well, if you can force people to come to Baron and you have yourself a Rakan, team fights become very easy to begin to start.
And Gambit have been the first Baron team in a lot of ways so far in the play. And so again, Flash Wolves just exercising a lot of control here in this early and continuing to slowly grow their lead. They're up to 2,000 or so as the game ticks on. Mugen still very active, has those kills as an early Executioner's calling after that Warrior plus the Dirk, and now Maple going to get donated over the blue buff. But there's not really safe places. Hanabi is going to check it out, but Control Ward instantly taken away. It seems like Gambit is starting to get a bit more active now.
Now, Gambit have grouped up as a 5-man unit, and they're using their numbers advantage to try and take down the mid-tier 1. You can see, though, Hanabi on the flank.
Said maybe it's time to start a team fight. Turret goes down in bot side, so they know they're just trying to force in a 5v4. They do get the first turret, but they lose 1, and Betty's still pushing on the bot lane.
I feel like this play makes sense because Gambit are aware bot tower is guaranteed to fall, and they have the Rift Herald in mid, so it's going to be much harder to defend. So rather than just concede mid tower as well as bot, they recognize, okay, Zaya's going to stay bot, we can create numbers advantage, and then we'll at least trade towers in the middle lane.
Absolutely, and now we'll see whether they're able to stop the team fight that's about to come out, because you can see Flash Wolves grouping up around a banner minion, grouping up around the Rift Herald, just want to continue to ride this one as much as they can, and Gambit is trading all of this damage for farm onto their 80 carry.
Ooh, Stayhouse, good flash, gets out from under the Rupture. But still, again, just stuff being taken away. The turret's being taken. Mugen again goes back in to take the blue buff. Flash Wolves are just kind of draining Gambit of resources on their half of the map.
Exactly that. Flash Wolves are just playing very calm, calculated League of Legends right now. They took top tower, they then took bot, and then through the Rift Herald, they secured themselves mid. They've gotten all the other side objectives in the meanwhile, and as they've gained more ground, they've stolen away the enemy jungle. And this is the next few steps, because you then look to gain vision control in the enemy jungle, you steal everything away, and that's when Baron becomes a big priority. And we already talked about it. Zaya, you have the Karma to empower her as well. Looking like she's going for an early Athenes, but then the Cho'Gath and Kha'Zix too. Like, this is a decent Baron-taking team. And with the double mountain, as you were talking about, Spawn, like, Gambit have to be very afraid of a potential early Baron.
Absolutely, and when you haven't even taken bottom lane tier 1, you have limited time of bouncing waves from top to bottom before it just reverses and comes back with a vengeance. Yeah. Makes it very hard to be able to calculate the correct window, because there's not many games in professional League of Legends where they're already setting up around Baron 22 minutes in with double mountain, and you haven't even touched their bottom lane turret.
I don't think the calm will last long, however. Gambit are not usually a team to go out without a fight. They are gearing up again to that big team fight. Flash Wolves, though, can certainly execute in those spots, and this vision is looking so good for the Flash Wolves as they push in and to sweep it out, because you know a Baron is coming in just a few minutes.
I feel like Gambit are just waiting for one more item. They want Lodic to, I would imagine, either get himself the Infinity Edge up next, or maybe he goes to something like the Essence Reaver. You have so many variations with your builds on the Kaisar, but Kira likely to go for something like the Leandries or the Void Staff. And once those are finished, that is when Gambit will say, okay, we're good to fight now, we're ready. And they just have to hold on until that point, because Flash Wolves, they should be more than happy to try and force a fight.
And that is the secret to scaling comps, exactly what you just said. How little can we seed before we have our items? They're actually looking for a play here onto Maple.
Pop the Righteous Gory, looking for Maple, but Maple runs away. Now Sordo going to look for the counter engage. Betty also here, firing some feathers into Diamond Procs. Not so tanky right now on the Trundle. Looks like Cloud Drake was the thing that got their attention, but Flash was already back to try and take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's not an objective right now that Gambit really care all that much about. They're going to use this time to clear out some vision, regain control over the Baron area, because they know that if they give up their Cloud Drake, nothing in the game changes apart from some scaling from the Elder. However, if they give over this area of the map, if they have to face check it, the game is well and truly done.
See if they overcommitted on the left side, but looks like not so, as Flash Wolves do dart back towards the right-hand side of the map. Both teams very mid-centric right now. Again, defending the big purple one that's on everyone's mind.
So, I mean, the problem for Gambit right now is, ooh, they could get engaged on.
Diamond actually going to be the target. They're going to try and maybe counter-engage, but he gets knocked around the bounce house. Sword though, dipping away, and Diamond actually lived through the assault. Logic waiting for his moment with the killer instinct, and Flash Wolves are getting their flashes spot. Logic goes in, finds the kill with the Hanabi, and that's the first tank down. Betty also grounded. Huge miasma, forced to flash out.
You can see Mugen trying to look for the re-engage, wants Diamond, but this is a problem. If you do not take down Trundle, if you don't take down Maokai, so much inbuilt sustain in this team comp, and they can just continue to fight forever.
This is the first good fight for Gambit, but Flash Wolves, it looks like they're after a little bit more.
Should be okay. Kira defends Stay Hoss as Sword Art once again looks for the engage.
You can see during that team fight, Flash Wolves would have wanted to get someone towards that bottom lane. There's now a huge creep wave crashing, and that just denies so much gold. You can see what was a 3,500 gold lead, now back to 2 just from better map positioning from Gambit.
And the funny thing is, if you're Flash Wolves, it's actually better to not engage in that situation, because Gambit were losing a lot of farm. This big wave started all the way out from underneath their turret, and it had just slowly worked its way through 3 waves of the Flash Wolves that no one from Gambit had picked up. So if Flash Wolves put all that gold and experience onto Hanabi, he now has a level over the Cho'Gath. You have that advantage. But it doesn't get picked up. Instead, they look to force a fight in mid.
Absolutely, and when we see how this happens, it's Diamond falling to 10% HP, but being able to get the ultimate off, and he just becomes so tanky and gets so much back. And then you're trying to chew through a front line of what is a full tank Maokai, a Braum, as well as a Trundle, with the damage threats just free hitting on your tanks who are trying to flee. At this stage of the game, Cassiopeia just starting to ramp up in that DPS, and they weren't able to go with it.
And one of the advantages of the Karma is when the team fight started to go south, you do have that great ability to disengage. And it wasn't like that Flash Wolves weren't doing any damage, they just couldn't quite secure that kill thanks to good positioning from Gambit and a great turn.
And this is the difference between, you know, a tank support such as a Braum that has those things built into the kit versus Sword Art, who is an initiation tool, but certainly not the tankiest member on Summoner's Rift. So the damage is much stickier when it starts to hit Flash Wolves. You know, Kha'Zix as opposed to Trundle, the Rakan versus the Braum. One error from this comp and everyone explodes.
Well, you can see Stay Hoss almost got the ball out of Tara, his banner minion. Not quite enough to help him out, and Hanabi does defend it, but still lots of pressure building here in mid. Gambit was smart to take that center turret first because they know they can at least force to contest for this Baron. Good 4-man slow them on Mugen. Knock-up follows. Sword goes back in onto Diamond. Always the target of loading around the side. He's on to Betty, who lets the ultimate out. The Betters are there. A good journey is there for the Cho. But Kira, he's taken down Maple. That's the support mid laner down. Edward, happy to be traded away as Kira grabs himself a double. Melodic killer instinct on, takes down Soda. Gambit's team fighting will not be stopped.
Absolutely. You can see again, Eddie, the absolute hero, jumps in front of his tank top laner, able to put up the shield nice and early in that, and just mitigated so much of the damage that will come out. Ended up falling, but was like a Superman at the start of that fight.
And now Gambit have their eyes on the Baron. Mugen is alive with Betty. Gambit have to be so careful around this objective.
No smite for Mugen, though. It's a couple seconds away, and I don't think he's going to make it in time. Kira is going to try and cut him off. The Bastion actually does get him out. He doesn't even have the smite, and Diamond procs rings true. Takes down the Baron, and now Mugen getting chased by Kira.
And Gambit find everything that they want. They built themselves a team fight composition. They outplay Flash Wolves in the fight, and with the Baron, they have now regained control over the game.
Yeah. And you can see that this is a team that is playing slow and weren't able to accelerate when they needed to. We talked about the big advantages they built. They weren't able to get priority over the Baron area. They gave up too much of their vision for free. When they fought to take it back, Gambit were ready and out-execute them in those fights. I'm
also just surprised by, given how much control Flash Wolves had over the map, they haven't utilized it. We can get to that in a second. Look, again, the engage goes on to Trundle. Kira and Lodic are just sitting on the back line with Edward, Stasios, and Diamond on the front. Lodic can reposition how he likes, and they just melt through this. When the tank is Sonya's, that means that your pro line is no longer there, and it becomes a 5v4. The Gambit can then just melt through.
And they're just not that tanky at this stage of the game, is the unfortunate reality of the situation. You see, once again, damage numbers are comparable but it is the members of the Flash Wolves that are falling down.
Gambit, no, in a team fight, it's more about the right target sometimes here. It looks like a counterfight being initiated here by the Flash Wolves. Gambit looking to turn tails. Kira was bot side trying to get some gold back. Gold about within 1,000. If that turret goes down, it'll pretty much equalize. And Gambit with the Baron know they need to apply pressure. This is where they always build their leads. They must do it now.
Now, I want to see this difference from Gambit because Flash will spend a lot of time just grouping mid, and Gambit with the Baron, they need to be utilizing more than just that. Get priority over mid, gain control over enemy jungle, and then rotate between bot and mid to secure these tier 2s.
And they also need to show the ability to start a team fight because so far, Flash Wolves have run at them, and the counter engages have been on point. But one thing that I saw, and I know that you were looking at as well, Betty, is their inability to create very aggressive, proactive plays when they had windows to go for it.
Well, again, Gambit do take a turret, so the gold now in their favor as they look to push it even further. 120 left on this Baron, trying to start a siege on the bot inhibitor turret.
Thing is, they need to be able to push these other waves too. They need to split this Flash Wolves lineup apart and use the fact that they have ability to engage rather than giving Flash Wolves an opportunity. Because if you group up as a 5-man and Sword Art lands a 5-man ulti, that's where things start to look bad for Gambit. So Flash Wolves in this 5v5 can still hold out.
The reality of the situation is if Stayhos isn't willing to go under the turret, the wave clear is still going to be there for the Flash Wolves. And at this stage of the game, they are not that far ahead. So you have to be able to drop your banner minions, be able to create pressure throughout the map, try and split up the initiation tools from Flash Wolves. One mistake at this stage of the game, especially with all the shutdowns being accrued, could turn it back.
Gambit showed kind of at the end of their qualification into this stage that they're not that willing to pull the trigger all the time. But Sword Art getting an instinct on Stayos, sets it up, and Sword Art zips away. The W isn't going to follow up, but he had enough shield still. The fight on the other front is out. Hanami, Pumpty Stoneblader's time and just gets feasted on. But still, the trigger is going to go down. Lodic has the damage. Betty, though, going to try and make a heroic 1v4. He's caught the miasma. He pops out the ult. He needs to pull the feathers back, but Stayos also not that tanky. Kira almost gets blown up, but again, Edward with the heroic Unbreakable saves his teammates.
This is what we were talking about, though. Grouped up as a 5-man unit, Flash Wolves can still fight. It was two separate skirmishes that were going on. Gambit found Sword Art out of position, but Flash Wolves found Diamond. And now with the Baron buff running out, Flash Wolves can regain a bit of control, maybe even secure this Drake.
Absolutely, and when you have 3 Mountain Drakes now being built up and the gold lead is once again back to even, this game is still on the brink, and I thought that pick was going to be game-changing because they got the one initiation tool that we've spoken about time and again. Sword Art off the CC being able to jump in with the Kai'Sa, was caught out of position, had to burn Cleanse, Flash, and ulti before the teamfight begun. But I think they got greedy here, prioritizing the full tank Cho'Gath. He just eats it.
I mean, I can understand trying to get through the front line, right? But trying to do it underneath the tower when you have Betty and Maple just wailing on you from the side, it became so easy for Flash Wolves to shut down the front line, not even lose a member. You know, I misspoke earlier thinking that Sword Art ended up going down, but Gambit, they end up getting pushed back. They still have control of the game. They still found a good amount of towers, but right now I just feel like what's happening is both these teams are grouping up and they're running at each other when they don't necessarily need to. Well, if you're Flash Wolves, that's kind of what you want to avoid because Gambit, they just want to team fight.
And they want to team fight when you're initiating onto them. They want to have the counter punch because we've seen that their success is off the back end of over-aggression from Sword Art, the inability to blow up one of the primary carriers, and Edward is just waiting for it every single time.
Well, on the note of carries, both Lodic and Betty are really scaling up. 3 items plus a QSS for both of them.
It is important to note that this is a stage of the game where Flash Wolves do generally start to grab massive advantages. You know, we're 30 minutes into the game now. Their major carries have the 3 items. And once again, we can see they are the team that is able to shove out their waves and get access to vision around the Baron area, around the Drake area, time and time again. Whilst Gambit look like they're winning the fights, still equal in turrets, 4 Drakes to nothing, and all of the control around Baron.
At the end of the day, you have to win the game as well. So it looks like Baron will be back up on the table in a minute 15. Flash Wolves will do it even faster now with the Mountain that they effectively took from Gambit after they kind of lost that engage. So no casualties on either side, but losing another Drake and giving Flash Wolves a 4th in a game that looks like it's going long could certainly be something you'll regret later.
Looking forward to seeing how these next few fights play out and how these teams work towards setting up around Baron. It is in a minute's time. Flash Wolves do have priority over mid, and Cho'Gath, after pushing out bot, will be able to join his team faster than Lodic and Edward will. We can see these lane assignments probably not optimal when your TP player is the one in the mid lane rather than your wave player. Will allow Flash Wolves to get into the tower, and that gold gap just closes.
Gambit, though, still posturing for a fight here in mid. Flash Wolves will not be deterred. Again, both teams know that mid is very important to have pushed out when Baron is on the line in 25 seconds.
I just love the fact that they are just grouping up in mid stages now, getting collapsed
Yeah,
on.
caught again. Maybe a little too much there with the face. Sword on the back with Muja looking to make a big flame play happen. Kira there with the ulti ready to go, but Swordart gets a 4-man knock. As Mugen dive into the back of the fight, still no one from Gambit down just yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. Hanabi can smell it. He wants it. Betty gets aggressive. Tries to pull the feathers through. Everybody gets blown up. It's 2 kills there, including Lodic, slain by Betty.
Absolute. On the back end of that team fight, the huge flank came out of Swordart. That was Mata-esque. He just goes on a mission through the jungle and manages to get the 4-man knocker.
And that was the ideal setup for the Flash Wolves because they bought enough time for Diamond to run out of his ultimate, Stasios to be chunked through by Betty. And now Flash Wolves with 5 members have their eyes on the Nexus.
And they've already got a banner of command minion there as well, Patry. This could be the last fight.
3v5 right now as Gambit struggle to defend their Nexus. First turret is looking to go down. Betty, so confident here with the Karma in his back pocket. Level 16, just dishing it out. Hanabi goes under the turret. Might be okay, though, and I think Flash Wolves have realized that it's time to pull away.
Short range carries into Cassiopeia is just so hard to hit the turrets. You can see they do get chased out of the base. However, with 5 members still available, this is either going to be a team fight or Baron falling down for Flash.
There's the TP flank from Stasios. He does have his ulti available.
Trying to do one better than Mugen and Swordart in that last flank. Flash Wolves, I think, have to read that they want to try and get this. There's the ult. They're going to try and collapse throw Betty. He doesn't have his ulti. He doesn't have his flash. They're going to try and chase him down. There's Lodic running in with the killer into with the ulti. Does come back up in time still. Betty gets shut down by Edward. Gambit in a 5v4 around Baron.
The carry is dead for Flash Wolves. They do have the... Oh, TP unavailable for Hanabi. Gambit now on the Baron. Keep your eyes on Mugen.
Cho'Gath around here as well, but like you said, he's a little too late. Mugen going to try and make a steal happen, but they're trying to sniff him out. He's going to make it into the pit if he can try. He needs to time out well. He's so low on health. Mugen steals the Baron away from Gambit.
Oh my word. Mugen comes up huge for the Flash Wolves and keeps them in this game.
And you can see already there are creeps in the base, so Swordart starts a fight.
Again, Hanabi gets to get onto Kira. Swordart makes the play. Kills the Gambit mid laner. As Mugen started it on. Now it's time to run for Gambit. They need to go back to their base, defend from the Super Stayhouse in a 1v3. It's going to take a while to kill him, but I think he's about to get cut down.
And if Stayhouse dies here, it is going to be a 4v5 inside the base because members of the Flash Wolves will be up and available. You can see he is trying to live for as long as possible, but ultimately he will fall.
And they start recalling. So it's like, all right, I'm just going to buy some time and cancel the backs. Again, it's going to take a while, but he's going to die eventually. Stayhouse is making him really work for it, though. Here on the Maokai, dodges the rupture, gets 750 health back from the Sap Magic Slap. He does it again, but he finally has slain Betty. Cuts him down.
Now there's a TP in the middle lane. Looks like that will come out from the Rakan. They're looking to get the push. And with the Baron available, Flash Wolves, they might want to try and end it now.
He lived for so long that Kira has respawned. What a clutch play from the top laner of Gambit. Now 30 seconds. They have to be able to hold on. And this is just... you love to see it.
Yeah, but now Gambit, they did everything they could with the miasma. They hoped that Mugen wouldn't be able to jump over. I feel like Stasios should have just stayed on top of Mugen, but he walks around the miasma, gets the jump over, and secures himself the steal. And now the Elder going to go in favor of the 4 Drake Flash Wolves as well.
And all of a sudden, short range 80 carry with 6 Mountain Drakes doesn't really care how many times he hits a turret because it's probably falling on the first. Betty is completed 6 items. He just needs the upgrade of the last Whisper. Monstrous Game 1 performance.
Almost there, and Mugen Steel's not only entertaining, but Pentakill and Baron Steel promotions are back for MSI 2018 with that one, as Mugen has doubled the chance of legendary and esports skins and mystery items to the end of play-in. So get him in now before the game ends, because it's looking close. Flash Wolves tearing down the bot lane, trying to crack another inhib.
Here comes Stasios looking for an engage onto an Elder Drake team.
Yep. Bad news bears, they did take the Elder in the replay. Flash was happy to be patient.
Well, even worse news was the fact that he actually just twisted advance to creep. Betty's shield is huge!
Again, we talk about Maple, it's not a big carry, but the Karma is doing more than enough work to try and close out this game.
Late game value of the Karma coming in clutch right now. Flash will secure themselves a second in here. Will Gambit go for the fight?
The bait though, I think might be Hanabi. Betty gets up, pops the QSS. Again, the front side is getting shoved up. Gambit need to find something. Lottie pumps the killer into with the heals, and the shields are just too much. He burns the ult and Stayhouse will get taken down. Hanabi in the backline almost takes down Lottie. Gambit are fighting with their backs towards the Nexus. Kai'Sa finally slain, and Gambit will be pushed all the way back to their fountain as the Flashers will take the first Nexus in what should be one hell of a series.
And it was a slow game, but the control over neutral objectives is ultimately what allows Flash Wolves to pick up the Elder Drake, to pick up the Baron, and to be able to slowly but surely kind of strangle Gambit out of that game.
I feel like my biggest criticism of this game was neither of these teams were using their side lanes at all. It was so much grouping and just so much trying to fight each other that when Flash was trying to fight Gambit, it was Gambit who were in the better position. Then when Gambit had the Baron, they were on the enemy base. Rather than trying to utilize 2 minions or 2 minion waves, they just kept grouping mid and they gave Flash Wolves an opportunity to find the fight.
We're just spoiled by Banner of Command.
It's
Side
true.
lane control has become drop a banner, group up with your team. You know, the channel of teleport sometimes is too long, but I certainly agree this is one of those games that you could have looked at the side lanes, especially as a Cassiopeia player, being able to attack it a little bit further.
But you've also got to look at some of the highlight moments, right? Like the fact that Mujin was able to find the steal. It could have been so big for Gambit finding that pick onto Betty from the flank. The fact that you had that sword out flank coming into the mid lane engage. So many individual performers really stepping up for their team. But unfortunately for Gambit, it was that final Baron steal that ended up costing them the game.
Yeah, not only that, we checked in with the rookies and said, how are they going to perform? Well, first blood to one and a Baron steal goes over to the other. I think it's very fair to say that they are prepared for this best of 5. And I mean, first punch has been exchanged. We'll see how the next one goes.
Flash Wolves with one game, but a win nonetheless. For more on how the Flash Wolves won that game, let's send it over to the State Farm Analyst Desk.
Thank you very much. A pastry time. Now that is